many of our Khulafa were bloodthirsty lunatics.
Hold on a second.
I would not have any faith crisis if we never had a Khilafah.
Wrong. This is totally wrong. Today we have a very, very interesting episode, inshallah, discussing Yasir Qadhi and Hatem al-Haj, a discussion about Islamic unity and Khilafah. There might be certain positions that I might disagree with. I'm going to go and discuss them heads on, inshallah ta'ala, with you guys. And let's start this video and let's move on. All right.
The obligation of establishing the Khilafah. Is it something that is fard?
Now, the Khilafah, someone may say, is the political expression of that unity, or the Khilafah is the actualization of that unity in the political sphere. Someone may say this, and they would be justified to say this, and it would be justified to say that it would be desirable. Like, if it is feasible, then it would be desirable to have a singular global leadership.
Khilafah is fard by ijma' al-Sahabah radiyallahu anhum, by ijma' al-Ummah, by ijma' al-A'imma, as Imam al-Qurtubi have said, radiyallahu anh, wa rahimahullah, as Sheikh Yasir himself quotes a little bit later. Right? So this is an issue. Khilafah is a fard, period. It's one of the biggest and the greatest fara'id of all the deen. The problem here is that Sheikh Hatem, may Allah subhanahu bless him, and I think, as he said about himself, basically, that he's been a pro-Khilafah person since he was 17 years old. And after, maybe 30, 40 years, people start basically losing a little bit of trust in the project and how realistic it is. And that's why he said, is it realistic? Some people might think it's realistic. He does not think it's realistic. Also, Sheikh Yasir, in multiple videos, I think in his discussion with Imam Tom and another speaker, he said it is not realistic. Maybe also with Muhammad Hijab, he actually strongly said this is, in his view, it's not realistic. Now, subhanAllah, these are more negative sentiments. They are negative sentiments. I think we should keep them to ourselves. If a person believes this is unrealistic, he does the good deeds and the khair that he can without propagating the negativity. Imagine everybody feels, it's not realistic. Nobody's gonna try. Nobody's gonna try. You know what I'm saying? Like we are in a state that we need to raise the morale of the ummah, not to put people down, to be honest. Again, if Sheikh Yasir and Dr. Hatem believes it's unrealistic, that's fine. Because see, when you don't have a plan, or you don't have maybe when you try many things and you just fail at all of them, and say, look, this might not be doable, khalas, you might think it's unrealistic, but Allah have demanded this unity. Allah have made this unity an obligation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants this ummah to be one single ummah. And they're going to debate this perspective, and we're going to see the merit of that argument, inshallah, in the next few minutes.
Of course, our ultimate end goal is the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
So let's stop right here. So Sheikh Hatem is saying the ultimate end goal is the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, I have zero doubt that Sheikh Hatem means right, and my issue is basically, what do youngsters understand from this? What everybody would understand from this, unfortunately, from an audience perspective, is that the pleasure of Allah is something and Khilafah is something else. See what I'm saying? And the end goal is the pleasure of Allah. How do you get the pleasure of Allah? Maybe through ibadah and personal devotion. No, this is incorrect. Personal devotion in itself is actually working to establish the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How can you basically have personal devotion when you're picking and choosing from the fara'id of Islam? But how do you attain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You attain it by doing all the fara'id and leaving all the muharramat. Is khilafah fard? Is khilafah fard? You see what I'm saying? So there's no such thing as personal devotion to God outside some of the fara'id. Khilafah is fard. You have to work for it just like you do your salah, your zakah, your siyam, your hajj, everything else. Birr al-walidain. All the fara'id needs to be in one basket. Is khilafah fard? Yes, it is. Period. Khalas, it's part of that basket. You can't be a pious, righteous person without having part of your life dedicated to this fard that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have set upon us. So the second comment, basically, that's been said a couple of times in this video, within the first, again, 10-15 minutes, is that if it is realistic, if it's possible, يا أخي, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah will never set an obligation until the person who's liable to this obligation, the person who's set to be the one who's supposed to undertake the task of delivering the obligation can handle it. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set upon the Ummah of Islam to establish the deen of Allah through such a political unity called Khilafah, then that means it's realistic and it's doable and it's practical. Period.
Or the political interpretation of Islam pointed out would be a fruit, a result of our ubudiyya lillah, of our basically commitment, our religious commitment, our commitment to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our devotion to Allah. It will bring about righteous governance, and it will bring about unity, and it will bring about that political manifestation or actualization like rain brings about vegetations. So it is a result. It's not the ultimate end goal, and it is not the effective cause. It is not a necessary or sufficient cause for Renaissance.
All right. So again, it's the same point kind of reiterated in a different way where, our personal devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring back this Islamic governance. What is the problem in this point? I'm not repeating what I said earlier. There's no linkage. It's as if basically when we become very pious and we pray a lot and we fast a lot and we do lots of dua, this thing comes down from heavens. No. Part of our devotion is to actually go and establish it, work for it, have a plan to basically organize as a Muslim ummah, as a Muslim community globally. You see what I'm saying? Like, it is the result of our devotion. What does that mean? No. It's part of our devotion is working for Khilafah. It's not a result of our devotion. This is wrong. This is totally wrong. Our devotion, if we have devotion to Allah, we will be working for it. There's no such thing as like our devotion to God as if it's separate from one of the fara'id, leads to this fara'id to come magically as a result of no, it doesn't work like that. It does not work like that. And the second point he makes is that Khilafah is not a cause for an Islamic Renaissance. Well, let's break this down. What does that mean? Can we have Khilafah? Can we have Renaissance without Khilafah? Subhanallah al-Azim. Yani, how could you have a Renaissance, a great civilization, a human progress without having a political entity that implements Islam, safeguards the Muslimin, and becomes the cause for scientific development, technological advancements, and economic prosperity? Like, what type of Renaissance are we talking about? Are we talking about basically a Renaissance that's living in the hearts of people? No, that's not a Renaissance. Progress happens basically, civilization gets built within a real nation that's independent, that is aspirational and ambitious, and that has a roadmap for life. That roadmap for life is Islam. When you take that ideology and you implement it in real life within the apparatus of a state, of a government, within society, that's when society progresses. That's when you're going to have a Renaissance for real. So again, there's this dichotomy. There's dichotomy between devotion and Khilafah, dichotomy between the pleasure of Allah and Khilafah. There's a dichotomy between progress and Renaissance and Khilafah. And that's all of them are false. They're all are false. And that's the problem, because now what we're trying to basically do here is reprogram the Muslim mind in thinking that if we can have all this stuff, we can have devotion and gain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Renaissance even civilization progress, without a state, without independence, without having our right for self-determination as a nation. These are risky concepts.
The technical term would be, it is fard or mustahab for you.
Fard or mustahab?
I'm asking.
Okay. It would be, what is it exactly that is fard? Establishing an imam in different areas is of course a fard. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Man mata wa laysa fi unuqihi bay'a mata mitatan jahiliyya." Whoever dies without having pledged an allegiance to an imam, he will die in a state of jahiliyya. Which means that you should not basically be promoting anarchy or rebelling against the legitimate authority, or Muslims should not ignore the importance of order, and hierarchy, political hierarchy. Now, is it a must to have a singular global leadership for Muslims? I think that it is a fard to work towards unity.
All right, so first of all, the question was very simple. I think this is the second time Sheikh Yasir asks them directly. Is this fard or mandub? We already spoke about it as being fard, yani. But still, may Allah bless him, Sheikh Hatem, for some reason he's trying to avoid the answer. Definitely he knows the answer is fard. Yes, it is fard. It's fard upon the ummah. طيب. And he even gave the dalil for it. One of the main dalils is the hadith in Sahih Muslim, which the Rasul says, "Man mata wa laysa fi unuqihi bay'a mata mitatan jahiliya." Whoever dies without having a khalifa ruling, a legal khalifa ruling over him, which is really the figurative speech of having a bay'ah in the neck, really, he dies death of jahiliyyah, death of pre-Islamic times. Now, he took this hadith, instead of using it to basically say, yes, it is fard, and answering the question, to go off a tangent, speaking about that it is all about law and order. It's about not rebelling against legitimate governance. What does this have to do with rebelling against legitimate governance? What does that mean? Like, for example, are the governments in our Muslim world today legitimate government? Is this what he's alluding to? What is this? What this hadith is saying is that we need to establish the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where the governance is based upon the sharia of Islam. It has nothing to do with rebellion or not rebellion. It has nothing to do with just mere law and order. That's not correct. Law and order must be through the Sharia of Islam. Otherwise, it'll be a different types of lawlessness. There's anarchy and there's basically oppression. And we are not here to choose between the two. It seems basically, again, what people could understand from what Sheikh Hatem is trying to say, which is definitely what the hadith is not saying, is that as long as you have law and order, this is what the hadith is trying to tell you. That's not correct. The hadith is trying to tell you human societies should be governed by by the system of justice of Islam that Allah have revealed to humanity, period. It's not speaking about just mere law and order, even if it's kufr, or even if it's basically man-made laws, man-made systems, and definitely has nothing to do with rebellions. I don't know why these issues came about. The hadith is not speaking about mere law and order, and it's not speaking about rebellion. It's speaking about basically establishing the deen of Allah, which means basically governance with His sharia, and the Muslimin living within that system.
I would not have any faith crisis if we never had a Khilafah until the Day of Judgment.
This is another statement. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive Sheikh Hatem, really. Like, again, why we're reaffirming that Khilafah is not very important. I wouldn't have any faith crisis if I don't live in Khilafah all my life. A'udhu billah. Ya Sheikh, may Allah forgive you. Seriously, maybe this is the only time where I made dua of istighfar for you. I should all the time in general, but how the hadith is saying, "Man mata wa laysa fi unuqihi bay'a mata mitatan jahiliyyah." Whoever dies without living under a khilafah, dies a death of jahiliyyah, right? And when we say khilafah, really, what I just said earlier is that it's a system where the sharia is being implemented, right? Forget about basically. So you're trying to argue that the unification of the Muslim world is unrealistic. Okay, fine. Put that aside. Let's not unify the Muslim world yet. Can we have a one country like Egypt, for example, or like Pakistan, or like Algeria, or Turkey, or Malay, or Indonesia? If one of these countries implements the Sharia, then you're good to go. The hadith is saying basically whoever dies without having a Khalifa or the Islamic system being ruled by. This is the meaning of the hadith. And you're saying here, if Khilafah is not established, you're not going to have a faith crisis. Subhanallah al-Azim. Somebody could die a death of jahiliyyah and he's not going to be worried. Forget a faith crisis. Maybe this is too exaggerated and dramatic. It's a fard that's not fulfilled. You are going to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a fard that's not fulfilled. So definitely should make you worried. The litmus test of iman that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have told the Sahabah about, when one of them came and asked him, what is the litmus test of am I a believer? He says, if your sins basically make you feel guilty and worried, Ya akhi, this is a fard. We already said it's a fard. How could somebody not have any guilt, any worry, forget about guilt, when Islam is not being established all their life? This is a very not true statement. And I believe that Sheikh Hatem does not mean this. He cannot mean this. He's a very learned person. Alhamdulillah.
There is a particular hadith that people quote often on the prophetic method. On the prophetic method. We were certain, and that is basically the problem of lack of knowledge we were certain that this meant that we are waiting for a Khilafah on the prophetic method.
Over here, he's saying that we should not be certain that Khilafah on ala minhaj al-nubuwah, on the way of prophethood, would come, in our lifetime or even basically in the future. Why? Because this hadith, as he's going to discuss later, is hadith ahad. I personally can't believe it, that the person who subscribes to the Athari Aqidah and the Ahl al-Hadith methodology would say such a thing. Now, definitely the hadith is hadith ahad, correct, it's true. But what does that mean? Is it sahih or not? If it's sahih, we have to believe it. And if it's da'if, we reject it. You see what I'm saying? Now, this hadith, in addition to it being sahih from Musnad Ahmad, rahimahullah, 80% of the hadith came about to be true. It's one of the prophecies of the Rasul. This is one of the nubu'at of the Rasul that came true. The Rasul said, look, you're gonna go through 5 phases. The first one is basically the nubuwah, and then Allah's gonna take it away. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did take the Rasul away. That's true. Then there's going to be a khilafah upon the way of prophethood. The Khulafa al-Rashidin came true. Then there'll basically be an inherited type of government, which is the Umayyads and the Abbasids and the Ottomans. And that came true. And then there'll be a dictatorship, form of dictatorship, coercive governments, authoritarian governments. And we're living it right now. It came true. Then the last piece, that after this dictatorship time, there'll come a Khilafah Rashida, a Khilafah upon the method of the Rasul. Why wouldn't we believe that this is going to happen? When 80% of the hadith, which had 5 prophecies, 4 of them came to be true. And that hadith is not on its own. Muslim scholars never said basically it's going to happen because of because of this one single report. There's many other ahadith. The few ahadith about Mahdi, at the end of time, the hadith about Isa alayhi salam, and that the Dajjal is going to come in. All those basically come together to say that there will be Isa alayhi salam is going to be one of the khulafa of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the end of times. So you have the Mahdi is going to be one of the khulafa, Isa is going to be one of the. So you take all these singular, hadith all together, and they're going to create a way stronger meaning. This is what we call basically al-mutawatir bil-ma'na. التواتر المعنوي. This is basically called concurrent meaning within the Sharia. You see what I'm saying? Set that aside, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us to basically go establish a khilafah on the prophetic method. So when we said earlier that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obligates us to do something, it must be realistic and it must be practical and we must be able to do it. You see what I'm saying? What do you want us to do? Just sit there and basically aspire for a khilafah, not on the way of prophethood, just basically go back to the Ottoman times or the Abbasid times, which definitely had its lows like it had its ups? Or should we just forget it and just, as you said earlier, live without a khilafah or our life? This is not what we as Muslims should be aspiring for. كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس. You're the best ever nation sent to mankind. We're not the best nation ever sent to mankind right now. We're behind all other nations in science and technology and even basically in our worship and devotion. Why? Because we were living in a situation where Islam is absent. It's absent from the streets, it's absent from the television, it's absent from the social life, it's absent from the economic life, it's absent from the political life. What do you think you're going to have as a result? Of a super pious people? No, this is an aspect of the Sharia that is well known is that the human being gets impacted by his environment.
That we don't have basically the concept of textual critique or the concept of critiquing the matn of the hadith, not only the isnad. So we recognize that the isnad needs to be critiqued, but the matn also needs to be critiqued.
So over here, Sheikh Hatem is trying to give as an evidence of why he should not believe in this hadith to be very certain, is the critique of the matn, which is like the inner text of the hadith. And he gives an example, basically, if you watch the video, of a hadith that was narrated by Ibn al-Jawzi, rahimahullah, using textual critique as a mechanism to reject certain hadith. And definitely that is correct. This is called Raddul Hadithi Dirayatan, rejecting the hadith due to a conflict between a qat'i, a certain reality, or certain evidence with the dhanni text, with the non-certain meaning of the hadith. This doesn't apply here. Where in this hadith this applies? Like bringing this subject again, unfortunately, is red herring. Is creating doubt that this hadith could have a conflict with reality. Where is it actually? We just said that basically 80% of the hadith, 4 out of the 5 prophecies, they came about to be true. Like there's zero conflict with reality. You understand? So subhanallah, bringing this issue, ya Shaykh, wallahi, broke my heart. Again, as a person who, alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, yani, I understand exactly all the concepts that you're discussing here. It broke my heart. Wallahi, it broke my heart because it's a red herring. The hadith is solid from a matan perspective, solid, 100% solid. The hadith, I'm going to say it one more time. The hadith from a matan perspective, from a textual analysis, is 100% solid. There's no negation. What reality is going to negate that basically a prophecy is going to come about? If me and you basically come about on the day of judgment, and when everything is done and there was no khilafah in Hajj Nabuwa, you can say, look, it didn't happen, there's a conflict. Ya Sheikh, we're still alive, yani. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring the khilafah ala minhaj Nabuwa bi'idhnihi ta'ala. Allah yabarak fikum. Let's go to the next point, inshallah.
It is wajib for this ummah by ijma' of the scholars. That there's ijma' that the Muslims have to elect or put up a leader. That Ahl Sunnah and the Mu'tazila and the Murji and the Khawarij and the Shia, all of them have agreed that it is wajib to have an imam.
So as you can see over here, Sheikh Yasir, you can go to the video, and narrated literally like maybe 3, 4, 5 quotations from some of the biggest scholars in the history of the ummah. All of them saying are that establishing khilafah is wajib. And now he's going to ask, inshallah, Dr. Hatem a question.
So one could say your sentiment at the beginning 5 minutes ago seems to clash with all of these quotations. What would you respond to this?
It doesn't. It may appear so, but it does not. I said in the beginning that we have to separate between imamate or imama, as in order versus anarchy, versus having one imam for the entire ummah. These are 2 different discussions. So Imam al-Juwayni rahimahullah in his book al-Irshad points out that difference, that one is min al-qawata and one is not min al-qawata.
Like so what Dr. Hatem is saying is that establishing khilafah is wajib and is qat'i, meaning it is 100% definite, certain that it is fard, right? But we would have loved him to say that when he was asked, is it fard or not? Like, he should have said, this is a qat'i, 100% certain issue that is fard upon the ummah. Why is it basically like halfway in the video, this has been basically discussed? Now, what Sheikh Hatem is saying right now is that, look, having one single Khalifa for the whole ummah is not an issue that is certain. Subhanallah al-Azim. Sheikhna, since when we differentiate between qat'i versus non-qat'i, certain and uncertain, the differentiation happens in aqeedah. Because if there's something that's qat'i and is ma'loom min ad-din al-darura, somebody could become a kafir, not believing in it. For example, if somebody doesn't believe that fasting Ramadan is fard, and he negates it, he says, no, it is not fard, that person could become a kafir. This is the issue between certainty and uncertainty. The fiqh is usually taken by not necessarily qat'i issues. But still, the fardiyah of khilafah is qat'i by the statement by the acknowledgement of Sheikh Yasir right here. Now the second issue, which is not qat'i for him from that perspective, is the issue of having multiple a'imma, multiple leaders. Ya Sheikh, what is the strongest evidence about this subject? Okay? Is the issue of, like, sometimes unfortunately the debate gets to, is it qat'i or not qat'i? So if it's not qat'i, as if it's allowed to have difference in opinion. Who said that? Who said that? The issue of having one single Khalifa for the Muslimin is the jumhur of the ulama, the majority, the vast majority of the scholars. Let me read you a statement by Sheikh Salah Sawi from his book. And Sheikh Salah Sawi is definitely one of your teachers, Sheikh Hatem, and the president of Amja, which you are part of, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, and is my teacher also at the same time. So alhamdulillah, we both have benefited from Sheikh Salah. All right, so I'm going to read you inshallah from the book directly, inshallah. And this is the section under the chapter of تعدد الأئمة, multiplicity of having a multiplicity of imams. It says اتفق جمهور أهل السنة والجماعة على عدم جواز تعدد الأئمة في الزمن الواحد سواء اتسعت رقعة الدولة الإسلامية أم لا. Meaning the vast majority, the jumhur, the vast majority of Ahl al-Sunnah wal-Jama'ah scholars have agreed that the multiplicity of imams, it is not permissible, even if the geography was super expansive. Now some of them, as he's going to say basically here, some might have made this condition, but it's not the asl, it's not the default ruling. It's an exceptional scenario for the inability to communication. It says basically in this day and age, communication is so easy, therefore there is no need for multiplicity. And then Sheikh Salah mentions those who differ with this opinion. Like you did, mention some of them. Who are they? Minority of the Khawarij, minority of the Shia, and minority of the Mu'tazila. Sheikh Salah says here basically, these are Ahl al-Bid'ah, and their opinion is rejected. It does not. He says basically the Sahaba radiallahu anhum has ijma' that basically having a multiplicity of imams is haram, is impermissible. And the opinions of these basically minorities of Ahl al-Bid'ah does not basically clash with our ijma'. Yani, at the end of the day, what is the strongest evidence? Are you trying to tell us that the strongest evidence is having multiplicity? Wallahi al-azim, this negates hundreds of years of scholarship. Not a single one major school of the madhahib have said that. Again, let's not. I'm not trying to play the game of majority or minority. I'm not with that. I'm with the dalil. Where's the dalil? Show us the dalil, Shaykh, that says from a Sharia perspective, multiplicity is halal. And tell us that this is stronger than the evidence of the jumhur, of the majority of the scholars. I don't think basically, we've seen that. I would love you to show us that, because again, the majority of the scholars say otherwise. And the dalils are very strong. The dalils are so strong, Shaykh, that basically, some scholars have said there's ijma', it's a certain issue, it's a matter that is certain. Okay, and there's some that like Imam Juwayni is like, it's not certain. It is certain, and I'll tell you and assure you, it is certain through at-tawatur al-ma'nawi. And then the evidence is you've listed lots of them yourself. So all of them put together, like the Imam al-Shatibi rahimahullah have taught us in al-muwafaqat, this is istiqra', and the istiqra' of the nusus al-shar'i, of their many, basically does lead to qata' and leads to certainty. All right, so now Sheikh Hatem is going to take us through a ride of telling us why the multiplicity of imams is something that could be reasonable, okay? Again, he does not basically present it as a decisive evidence. This is my issue, and I asked him, I'd love to basically see him basically saying this is the stronger evidence, and to do comparison between the jumhur and his opinion. And this is why I personally feel it's just like casting doubt on the super vast majority of the scholars and why they said multiplicity of imams are actually impermissible. But let's go through it, inshallah. We'll hear what he has to say here.
There is not a single explicit ayah in the Quran, or close to explicit, or even apparent a verse in the Quran that demands a singular political entity for all Muslims.
That's not correct. This is not correct. And since when, really, wallahi al-azim, seriously, this has two issues. Since when it has to be explicit? النص الشرعي, the address of the legislator, نص الشارع, has a منطوق, a مفهوم, and a معقول للنص. Has an explicit meaning, and has sometimes non-explicit, inferred meaning, and an implicit meaning. So all three types are taken by the fuqaha. It's not something new. If every single hukum needs an explicit statement, so where's marijuana being haram? Show me an explicit statement. Listen, fiqh is not done like that. Shaykh, you know this better than everybody else. But again, this is very sad. It's very sad that basically, wallahi al-azim, I know it's not intended. Wallahi, I have to believe that's not intended, because it's just I don't know what to say, slip of a tongue maybe. But the Quran does have basically ayat that can only be understood as such. For example, وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ وَلَا تَنَازَعُوا فَتَفْشَلُوا وَتَذْهَبَ رِيحُكُمْ. Do not divide amongst yourself, lest you lose your power and you become weak. But what is that division? Like, isn't basically having multiple countries with the separate independent leadership, isn't that division? Isn't that division? Isn't this basically Sheikh Salah Sawi in his books, he negates the multiplicity by saying having multiplicity leads to tanazu', which is referring to this ayah. It leads to inner fighting, fighting between the believers, instead of everybody basically having the same one leadership, one nation, and so forth. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Stay strong and united, basically firm upon the Tawheed and Islam. And actually, some of the tabi'een have said this is the Jama'ah. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ. This حبل الله is Jama'ah. The rope of Allah is the Jama'ah. Some of the mufassirin of the students of Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا, and do not divide amongst yourselves. When you say there's nothing explicit, these ayat are giving that meaning. Subhanallah al-Azim. May Allah forgive us. Does it have to be explicit? No, it doesn't have to be. It's a criteria that you made up to set the bar high, and this is a fallacy. These ayat, indirectly or directly, implicitly, or through linguistic inference, it teaches us that basically the unity amongst the believers must be full. The ummah of Islam must be fully united. Period. In addition to that, there's the hadith that you're going to mention. Let's go through the hadith that you're going to mention, inshallah.
إذا بويع لخليفتين فاقتلوا الآخر منهما.
Yeah.
من بايع إماما فأعطاه صفقة يده وثمرة قلبه فليطاعه ما استطاع فإذا جاء آخر ينازعه فاضربوا عنق الآخر.
So he narrates the main ahadith that specifically, explicitly says. Now these ahadith are explicitly saying do not have more than one khalifa. One hadith, and this is in Sahih Muslim, says if there's two khalifas, kill the second one. The other hadith, same thing. It says kill the second person. If there's someone comes in, tries to challenge the first khalifa, kill him, whoever he was. And there's other hadith basically that he didn't mention. For example, the hadith of Kan Banu Israel, the Israelites used to have a prophet every single time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every time a prophet dies, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends another prophet, and the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, then there's no prophets after me, but there will be khulafa, there'll be caliphs after me. Yeah, فَفُوا بِبَيْعَةِ الْأَوَّلِ فَالْأَوَّلِ. He says, keep your word to the first person who gets bay'ah, meaning one khalifa for the ummah. One khalifa for the ummah. He didn't say basically everybody can get their own khalifas. So multiple ahadith saying that it is one. Now the argument that Sheikh Hatem creates here in this segment of the video says, what if it's like moon sighting? It is not like moon sighting. It is not like moon sighting, and you know better basically. But since you said you prefer the contextual language theory, what is the context here? Did the Rasul is he speaking to a bunch of crowds? Is he speaking to part of the ummah, or the hadith has al-umum by default? From the hadith, he's speaking to the ummah because he's speaking in you, the plural you. Which one is it? Which one is default? But that's what I'm saying. I asked you earlier, Sheikh. Show me the evidences that you believe are stronger than the jumhur. Don't just tell me the possibility of the interpretation. Show me what is stronger about this interpretation instead of just throwing it as a possibility. Yeah, sure, many things are possible. But we've negated those possibilities with the stronger evidence. Period. Next, he goes into, without going to the segment here, goes into the ijma'. He tries to basically, again, create some doubt about the ijma' of the Sahabah radiallahu anhum on this ta'addud.
The ijma' is reported. But didn't the Ansar say, minna amir wa minkum amir?
Again, over here, Sheikh Hatem is trying to create the possibility of an understanding. Sure, the possibility of an understanding, maybe possibility of misunderstanding of the narration. And Sheikh Salah in his book basically negates this. Sheikh Hatem is trying to say the Ansar at the beginning said, minna amir wa minkum amir, meaning let's create two amirs. And Sheikh Hatem saying, look, the Ansar, did they misunderstand a core tenet in Islam or having? Sure, what's the problem with that? Some of the Ansars, not all of the Ansar, some of the Ansar, and maybe some of them were main, but there's emotion high, and they were giving bay'ah to Sa'ad bin Ubadah. And then the Muhajirin came to basically kind of like, set the Khilafah within Quraysh. So maybe there's multiple explanations from a human perspective. But who cares about that? What we care about, what did they have consensus upon? They all had a consensus that it is one Khalifa and it's going to be one single person. And they retracted. What's the problem with people having a misunderstanding? Ibn Abbas, for example, thought that, one form of riba was halal until he corrected himself. Some individuals in the Sahaba might misunderstand a hukum or two, or even more than two hukum. Not every single Sahabi was a scholar. You know that better than anybody else. So the issue that it is no, it's not possible. The Sahaba had ijma', they had a little difference, and they had ijma' afterwards. So the ijma' was set, and the ijma' has been reported through tawatur. Period. Done. Khalas. So again, I'll leave this basically here. Sheikh Hatem, this whole approach of basically trying to say there's a possibility of understanding doesn't mean that this understanding is sound. And number two, even if it's sound, doesn't mean it is the strongest understanding based upon the evidences. So what we'd love to see again for the third time is your derivation, which actually argues that multiplicity is the strongest opinion, negating the vast majority of the scholars, as you have said in the video. May Allah bless you. All right, so brothers and sisters, now Sheikh Yasir is going to say something very, very concerning, okay? Let's listen carefully to what he's saying. Bismillah.
And as long as anarchy is eliminated, that to a great extent, the spirit of what the Sharia wants us to do has been accomplished.
Sheikh Yasir is trying to make an argument that, what is needed, the spirit of the Sharia is to have law and order. And within this law and order, as long as the believer can practice his salah and zakah and siyam and the sha'air, that's good to go.
So as I said, I believe that it's an obligation on us to work towards the Khilafah as an end goal.
As you can see, like Sheikh Hatem was so uncomfortable. He's like, no. I believe that it is fard upon us to work. It's an obligation upon us to work for establishing Khilafah. You know what I'm saying? Subhanallah. This notion that as long as there's law and order, even if through man-made systems, and as long as the Muslim has the freedom to practice their religious beliefs, what is secularism except just that? Secularism is having a government by the people that protects the religious rights of the individuals and allows every individual to practice their own religious devotion. This is secularism by the book. Separation of deen from life. So may Allah forgive Sheikh Yasir. Seriously, I'm just flabbergasted that he explicitly is pushing for this. I hope this is not your stance, Akhi. I'm really going to give you the biggest benefit of the doubt here. I would rather you basically explicitly go say, this is not what I'm looking for. As Muslims, we must live under a government that rules by the divine laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I know that in different parts of this video, you're very sensitive about basically Muslims calling for such a thing in the West, and we don't. As Muslims, basically, our stance is that we are here in the West as guests, just like the Muslims in Abyssinia were during the Sahabah's time 1500 years ago. And we want to live by Islam in our own Muslim world, not here. We don't need to basically cause any change. We're not calling for any change in the systems of the Western nations. No, there's no problem. We're here as citizens and permanent residents. We respect the law as it is, as long as it doesn't conflict with our beliefs. And if it does, we just basically migrate away. Period. But the notion that we can live under any law and order, and this is what the Sharia wants, just people living in harmony, any type of harmony, and there's no such thing as harmony in the first place. Look at what's happening in these countries, all these populist right movements against the left and the left against the right, and their lack of justice. There might be some law and order, but the lack of justice. What is the premise of Islam? Is justice for all. Whites and blacks and Muslims and non-Muslims. Where's the justice? Do you see this system as just? No. The laws of Allah are the only means of justice. Period. All right, so now we're going to go to another point where Dr. Hatem tries to argue that the Islam does not have a full detailed political system. Let's listen to this.
Therefore, having a fixed detailed system would not be appropriate.
Feasible even, yeah.
Would
And
not
that's why,
be
yes,
appropriate.
and even historically, we have seen different iterations of systems.
So hold on 1 second. So Sheikh Hatem here and Yasir are trying to say, look, Islam doesn't have a detailed political system. Now, he did basically mention some of the wisdom of that. But why are we making this point in the first place? Why? Why is it as if we're trying to say, like some of the liberals, by the way, they use this argument a lot, oh, Islam doesn't have a political system, just has some values, political values. No, that's not correct. It is not correct at all. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Ma'idah, الْيَوْمَ أَكْمَلْتُ لَكُمْ دِينَكُمْ. Today I have completed your deen. So the political system is part of the deen. If the deen is complete, then therefore the political system must be complete too. This is the question that we should be asking. Does Islam have a complete political system? Maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't want to detail it as much as you think. Why are you comparing yourself, astaghfirullah al-azim, with the details that you think are needed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is inappropriate. I believe and everybody should believe, as a Muslim I'm saying, as a Muslim, I believe that Islam is complete. And therefore the political system is complete. It could be this big or that big. This does that much detail to this much or this much detail. It doesn't really matter. The question is, do we have a political system? Yes, we do. Is it complete? Yes, it is. That's it. All right. So the next point is Sheikh Hatem is going to, discuss a little bit of Islamic history. Let's go through this.
Many of our Khilafah were bloodthirsty lunatics.
Hold on one second. How is our kids going to feel proud of their history? Like, history is your identity. When you really come and tell them basically our Khilafah are bloodthirsty lunatics, it's crazy, really. Like, come on, bro. Wallahi al-azim, Sheikh Hatem, this is I love you for the sake of Allah, but I don't know what to say about this. There's nothing to say that is. Look, there's our history is not a history of angels and saints. We're human beings, and maybe for those bloodthirsty lunatics, you should have discussed with the Ummah, why did we have them? Did we have them within the Khilafah al-Rashida, the Khilafah on the method of prophethood, or did we have them basically within the era of inherited governance? And when government is inherited, you get bad apples into government. Maybe let's discuss that instead of basically poking holes in our own history. We had great Khalifas, we had bad Khalifas, I understand. But that's not the way to present our history to our youngsters. Who's going to be watching your podcast except the youngsters and those who are trying to understand Islam? This is very egregious. We're not trying to hide basically the black dots in our history, but let's maybe focus on the good ones, and critique instead of just basically disparaging our history. Let's critique it. Let's understand why did these mistakes happen, so we don't redo them again. My 2 cents, may Allah bless you, is my advice. Allah barak feek. Let's go to the next point, or let's go to another point basically where Sheikh Hatem now discusses a point about, again, related to history, but analyzes the outcome of it.
The Sharia, not the Khilafah, was the backbone of this. The community, not the Khalifa, was basically the driving force of this.
So it's the Sharia, not the Khilafah. It's the community, not the Khalifa. Sheikh, again, I think this is really red herring. This is just like, to say that this is confusing to the public. Because how can you have Sharia in a state without Khilafah? You understand? They come together. The Khilafah is the system that implements the Sharia by definition. Number 2, the Ummah, if it is righteous, it will make sure it has a freely elected Khalifa that represents it and implements the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon it. So when you try to split them again, I'm sensing a little bit of secularization, that there could be success from the Ummah without a Khalifa, and there could be success by implementing the Sharia without Khilafah. Again, this is a, sadly, I see it as a secularized argument. I'm not accusing you of being secular. Wal-iyad billah, you're not. And if I knew you would, I would say it, but you're not. But again, this rhetoric is really secular. Well, what is it if we're going to separate the people from the political leadership and the law from the state? What is it? What is it called? Separating the law from the state. Secularism. Separating the people can have beliefs and success without the leadership, the political leadership. It doesn't work like that. All right, so now we're going to go with another point where the prioritization of Khilafah is discussed. It's very important, so listen very carefully.
I don't have any problem with people who aspire to, look forward to, dream of Muslim unity, Muslim integration, Muslim cooperation.
So at least basically there's no problem with those who aspire for Khilafah or prioritize it.
How could I? How could anyone who's, a Muslim
That is good.
have a problem with this? So the problem that I have is people exaggerate the priority of this.
What does that mean basically when we exaggerate the priority? It's either a priority or it's not a priority. It's either a high priority or low priority. What is it? Is it, Yasir Qadhi was, to be honest, was very, very frank. It's like a low priority for him. It's not even in his top 20 list. But where is it in your priority, Sheikh Hatem, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have told us that without Khilafah, we would be weak. وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ وَلَا تَنَازَعُوا فَتَفْشَلُوا وَتَذْهَبَ رِيحُكُم. Meaning basically, do not bicker amongst yourselves. Do not divide and fight and bicker amongst yourself, lest you would be weak. And we're supposed to basically be united. We're supposed to be strong. We're supposed to basically be a model nation, a great civilization. We're supposed to protect our land, our people, our deen, our muqaddasat, our sacred places. We can't do any of that. If Khilafah is not a priority, what is a priority? What is a priority? When our sisters and brothers basically are getting raped and slaughtered in East Turkestan, in Kashmir, in Palestine, everywhere in the world. Islamophobia is everywhere in the Western world. Why is this not a priority? I don't understand. I can't even fathom why Khilafah is not the number one priority in people's minds. It is our means of salvation in the dunya and our means of salvation in the akhirah. It is the way we practice our deen by establishing it in real life and the means to basically for our prosperity and our dignity. Yani if all this is not good arguments, which are all from the Sharia, by the way, to make this basically the number one issue, it is the number one issue. Okay, the next point, inshallah, is Sheikh Yasir Qadhi will be presenting the spectrum of Islamic movements. Let's discuss this.
Even though I personally don't agree with those strands, but multiple strands have this notion of extreme quietism and apolitical activism. And they interpret the Quran and Sunnah, obviously, and Seerah. They interpret this to indicate that it is not a part of our Sharia to actively challenge the rulers and get involved in the dirty business of politics, as one of them said. Rather, what we should do is strive to be pure spiritually and amongst our own circle of influence. And when that happens, Allah will gift us.
This is the issue. So Sheikh Yasir is trying to say basically, even though he doesn't agree with them, but these are all movements that should be accepted as as a true understanding of Islam. No, we're not here basically trying to package people into boxes. Whether it's the Sufi or the Tablighis or the traditional Salafis or the academics, put that aside. This is not the point. The point is basically there's one issue that we need to understand. Is this person could be Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Doesn't mean that he doesn't have sin. Doesn't mean that he doesn't have wrong views. We're discussing the view of actively, as he said, actively working to establish the deen and not waiting for a gift of God that comes from heaven. Allah will gift it to us when we work for it. In tansurullaha yansurkum. If you do your job by basically obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and give Allah's deen victory, then Allah will give you victory. This is the true meaning of Islam. So here the argument is that no, these guys are we might not agree with them, but they're a valid perspective. No, they're not a valid perspective. It is not a valid perspective. Nothing's going to fall from heavens, and God's gift is not going to come to us when we are not working actively towards it, period. Okay, so now let's go to the next point, which talks about local governance.
Why should Muslims not aspire towards unity? Why should Muslims be denied the right to aspire towards greater unity among themselves? But this will have to come after we make some progress at the local level in our countries. We need to have righteous governance.
So now Sheikh Hatem al-Haj is trying to say, look, before we get to that ultimate unity, this grand unity, I don't know why basically like the whole argument from the beginning, it's as if they're assuming that those who call for Khilafah want this grand unity overnight. No, this is not correct. It's totally incorrect. Every single person that wishes or dreams about an Islamic governance system, it has to start somewhere. It has to start from a local perspective, and I hope basically this is what's been preached by both of those gentlemen, or at least by Sheikh Hatem specifically. Like we're agreeing on this point, but what are we doing from a local perspective to establish the deen of Allah? You know, what I hear is basically people saying, well, focus on your heart, focus on your tazkiyah, focus on your local community. It's not a faith crisis, basically, if it doesn't happen. I don't think any of that's going to basically help us to change anything global or local, to be honest. So this is the issue with this argument. Okay, so now let's now refocus the local from the Muslim world back to the Western world. Sheikh Yasir is going to make us a nice point here.
Something that the Sharia asks of us to do in minority situations, to aspire to a Khilafah or to aspire to political dominance.
Okay, well, we agree. Sheikh Yasir, I already said that we agree. But if we're not going to call for establishment of the deen or Sharia law in the Western world, which we agree that we shouldn't be doing that, we should respect the West as it is, basically, while we're here. But shouldn't we basically be calling for the Muslim world to be run through the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is what we're talking about. There's no disagreement that we shouldn't be trying to push for our views to be accepted in the West. We shouldn't be doing that. So let's go now to the next point, which is what? Which is, again, Sheikh Yasir is trying to push this whole law and order theory of understanding those texts that has to do with leadership.
Them not bearing the Prophet until they had established the law Khilafah. It appears to me you're understanding this more as a system of governance that prevents anarchy.
Okay, again, he's trying to put. He asked this question, Sheikh Hatem, like almost an hour ago, within their discussion. He asked it again because Sheikh Hatem didn't give him what he wanted, I think. And this time, basically, maybe Sheikh Hatem was a little bit more flexible, but still, his prior answer doesn't evaporate. It is not about law and order. As Islam doesn't want leadership just for law and order. This is not correct. This is totally incorrect. Islam wants a leadership that is guided by Allah's law, subhanahu wa ta'ala, period. Leadership without the guidance of Allah's laws is nullified. It's not something that basically we are satisfied with. It's not an objective on its own. Our objective is to have governance that leads to law and order based upon the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that must be explicitly said. So it is, Sheikh Yasir tried to say that the Sahabah radiallahu anhum, after the Rasulullah's death, they needed the Khalifa. Why? Because otherwise there would be civil war. This is not correct. This is not correct. It's totally incorrect. They wanted the Khalifa to basically perpetuate unity on Islam. Unity on Islam. So you're telling me that if these tribes, basically every tribe would have been applying Islam on their own, they would be fine? No, Abu Bakr Siddiq would have basically forced everybody again into another unity. Subhanallah al-Azim. So this is a dangerous narrative, to be honest. All right, so now we come to the last point before we conclude this episode, inshallah.
In my humble opinion, all of these movements are within orthodoxy. They're not even outside the spectrum of Sunnism.
So again, I think Sheikh Yasir is so adamant at basically making sure everybody's orthodox. Yeah, we're all orthodox. That's fine. All these groups are orthodox, but that's not the issue. The issue of Khilafah is basically, are these different groupings or movements or whatever you want to call them, basically, are they working to establish the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You could be an orthodoxy, but you could basically have a wrong view in one mas'ala, and this mas'ala misunderstanding this mas'ala doesn't make you a mubtadi'. Who's saying that? Unless you have a bid'ah view, you're not a mubtadi', but you could be from Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, you could be within the orthodoxy, but without doing your task, your job, your wajib, your fard of establishing the deen of Allah. This is what should basically be primary discussion within this issue. Anyway, so with that, inshallah, we have finalized our session for the day. And this is what I would say. This is my conclusion for this, that there was lots of argumentation that were presented just to create the notion that it could be a possibility of a different interpretation. Could be a possibility of this, could be a possibility of that. What is the strongest opinion on the matter? Is it multiplicity of leaders or one unifying leader? One unifying leader. Is khilaf an obligation, non-obligation, an obligation? Is it qat'i or non-qat'i? It is qat'i. Even if it is not, it is still the strongest opinion. This is what we need to understand from this discussion, that Khilafah is a fard. It is if it's not the highest priority, I'm not going to discuss that, it's one of the highest priorities for every single Muslim. And without Khilafah, we're going to continue to be dishonored as a nation. That there's no prosperity, there's no strength, there's no dignity, there's no Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without Khilafah. So if people don't aspire for this, don't have a dream to establish this in the Muslim world, well, forget it. Then basically we're not living Islam. We're living just a secularized version of this deen that is totally impermissible. At the IIT Institute, we're going to continue to help desecularize the Muslim mind. This is our mission. We're trying to desecularize the Muslim mind of every single person, every single Muslim in the Western world, inshallah ta'ala, and spread this deen in its actual form as the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam have preached it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us in doing that and help everybody else, basically like Sheikh Yasir and Sheikh Hatem, to also be pushing in the same direction of desecularization. Barakallahu feekum, jazakumullah khair for watching this a little bit more longer episode, and I hope you enjoyed it and learned a little bit, inshallah. If we made any mistakes from shaitan, myself, if anything I said is good, it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and like our channel, and leave any comments or questions you have in the comment section, and we'll see you inshallah next week. Barakallahu feekum, jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. See you next week.